Hi Zoe.
Hi Tizzie, how are you?
Good.
That's good.
So, episode 3?
3, we've made it.
Yes. Is it week 3, episode 3?
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah.
So, we were talking about formula in the first episode, and the second episode we ended up talking about blankets and togs and so on. And let's talk about, you wanted to talk about the importance of a routine.
Yes, yeah, sort of leading on. So we've just had baby. We're either still in hospital or we've taken baby home, and we were discussing why some people might not start with the book, but we really want to encourage them to start with the book and the routines.
So I think the importance of the routine, there's a couple of things. Oh, excuse me. So there's a couple of things with the importance of a routine. So we were talking about, a baby in special care goes on a routine. We've sort of already touched on it. A baby in the ward doesn't necessarily go on a routine, but routines are really, really important. Now, they're important because if a mum just feeds, and at some point we'll talk about breastfeeding further on in the book, and this is just the beginning, and we'll talk in a lot more detail.
There's more.
But if a mum doesn't breastfeed on a routine, there's a risk in the first few days that the baby might just sleep and sleep and sleep and sleep, and then the mum's not going to get milk supply.
Yes.
And some babies are too weak to wake up and demand a feed.
Yep.
And then in the old days, they used to do like a 4-hour routine in hospital. And by the time the mum left, then mum stayed in hospital for 2 weeks. And by the time the mum left hospital, milk had dried up. Now we know the best thing is a 3-hour feeding routine for the breasts, not the baby. So a baby would like 4 hours, but your breasts need 3 hours. So if you do a 3-hour routine, you're going to get better milk supply. If you start the routine if you start the first feed of the day at the same time every day, so every feed's at the same time, and milk's going to be a better quality. The thing is, when you use a routine, we know babies like routines because, like, even you'd probably see this with your own boys, like, children like to know what's going to happen, when it's going to happen. If they want to watch, like, I'm going to go way back to years and years ago when I had this little girl in my care, and she wanted to watch Shrek over and over and over again because she knew what was going to happen, when it was going to happen. They don't want to watch the next episode of Shrek. They want to watch the one that they've always watched. Yeah. Babies are the same. They want to know what's going to happen and when it's going to happen. Now, in the ideal world, you wouldn't use a routine. You'd demand feed your baby. I developed my routines not by saying, I'm going to put a baby on a routine and this is what we're going to do, but I was lucky enough to go to Mozambique and watch women in the natural environment of they demand-fed babies, but they could because they were tied to them. Like, you can't now, you can go, I'm going to have a baby. I don't want to say hippie, but I'm going to have a baby. And I thought you were a hippie. Are you a hippie now?
I'm definitely a daughter of a hippie. And
I always thought that you were like that, and now I'm like, Zoe's on like, did you know that you ghosted me? Do you know what that means?
You tell any of my friends I introduced to you that I ghosted you.
So I originally met Zoe because her friend Sarah worked in my office for many, many years. And Sarah told me that she had this friend who had a baby at 25 weeks and 3 days. And then I wanted to follow how the babies were doing. So I asked to follow her on her private Instagram page and she didn't let me.
But that's what I'm saying.
And it was my first ghosting. I was Tizzie
Hall.
I
did not know who Tizzie Hall was.
I am Tizzie Hall. So it's, anyhow. You ghosted. Well, maybe, I don't know. But anyway. So in the ideal world, if you were some type of mum who could have your baby strapped to you, tied to you, never put them in a pram, you never put them in a car seat, and you'd feed them every time they cried a hungry cry. So the routines were developed by I was away in Mozambique and I saw these women and they're in fields and they'd come in and they'd all sit down and they'd be feeding the babies and then they'd go out and some more would come in. And I was like saying to them, well, a couple of things. The first thing, which was really weird, was, did you know that they don't feed their own babies when they're born?
No.
I don't get this, because what about the colostrum?
Right.
Yeah.
Do they not know the importance of it? Or does a mum with more milk feed the baby?
So what happens is, the really, really young mum who's had her first baby, so they'll be like, you're the young mum, I'm the old mum, can I feed your baby? So when the baby's born, the baby is given to the mum whose boobs have breastfed loads of times and are like, conditioned. Yes. So the nipples are all good, know how to feed, not going to get cracked and sore and bleeding, which actually never happened to me because I followed a woman in the UK called Claire Barron Cook.
Right.
And she is fantastic, lactation, I don't know what her official name is, but feeding on routine. That baby gets given to the boobs that know how to feed, and then the new baby is given No, and then the new mum is given the older baby who already knows how to feed.
Oh,
and then
to
I
get the
keep
boobs
saying,
going.
but then the older baby gets the colostrum, not the milk.
I suppose they eventually get it. No,
But
but
when
they
they're
need
older.
It. Okay, no,
I don't
they need
know,
it
I
when they're
don't.
bubbers.
Okay, so we're not
Yeah.
going to do that then?
No, we're not going to do that.
I don't have any milk,
But it's
so we're not going to do it
interesting.
anyhow.
Sure,
But
I
it's
get-
interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
so watching these women, they came in and they'd sit down, and I'd say to them, oh, what age is your baby? 6 weeks. Oh, what age is your baby? 6 weeks. What age is your baby? 6 weeks. Why have all these women got babies the same age? They'd all disappear. A few minutes later, what age is your baby? 8 weeks, 8 weeks. And I suddenly realised that all the 6-week babies demanded a feed at this time. All the 8-week babies demanded a feed at this time.
Oh, wow.
Wrote them all down. That's where the routines came from. For the breastfeeding routines.
Wow.
Yeah. So, if you could demand feed, now the true meaning of demand feed is to feed your baby when your baby cries a hungry cry. But when you
How do
first
you
had
know
your
what
boys,
a hungry cry is? Any cries. Is every cry a hungry cry?
no,
when a
the
baby's
cry that
first
goes
born?
wah 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 wah, and it doesn't change tone and it doesn't change pitch. That's a hungry cry. The cry that goes wah 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 wah. That's not a hungry cry because that's stopping and starting and changing.
Yeah.
So the hungry cry is wah, 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 and it doesn't change. Now the hungry cry will go until that baby either flakes with exhaustion or is fed.
Is that's what you call the emotional cry too?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's an emotional, that's an I want, that's an I need cry. And you only really see that till about 12 weeks.
Okay.
Really, especially when they've started solids, you don't see that. So when your baby's like 6, 7, 8, 9 months, if they're emotional crying, it's not because they're hungry. You don't have to worry about it then. They've hurt themselves or they've banged their head on the side of the cot because they didn't have enough bedding. Anyway, so you feed your baby when your baby cries a hungry cry, okay?
Yes.
So the routines, the feedback I get from mums is they love the routine from day one, especially some people do it from day one with their first, other people come back and do it from day one with their second and third because the baby cries and they look at the routine and they go, oh, the baby's due a sleep now. That must be the baby's tired cry. And then they learn the tired cry. Oh, the baby's due a feed next. That must be the baby's hungry cry. And then they know that that's their baby's hungry cry and it's due a feed now. So the feedback I get is the routines help them to learn their baby's cries. I also get feedback that like they can make an appointment, like their 6-week check. It's so much easier. Like I hear people say on the internet, I read, you shouldn't read, never read the internet about you, about me, about the podcast. Can we make a deal?
Noted.
We're not going to
Noted.
read any negative stuff about the podcast.
Okay.
Or maybe we have to. I don't know.
You can,
Anyhow.
you can do that.
So-
Summarise to me.
And if people see negative stuff, don't send it to us. Because there's nothing worse than people keep sending you. No one sends you the positive stuff. And you don't want to see it. You don't want to know about it. Like, there's so much stuff out there about me. I mean, did you know I'm childless?
Yeah, I have heard that you're childless.
This week it would be so much easier if Nathan was at his parents' house with COVID and I was childless and I could just worry about myself, you know? Anyway, so you... if you need to make your 6 weeks, so I was saying, you read on the internet, yeah, that like, oh, routine, they're not robots, and oh, you can't have a life on a routine. It's the opposite.
I agree
Because I actually think
completely.
they are robots. Because if they weren't robots, and I'm going to get quoted on this is going to be out there with the uninformed.
first.
Tizzie Hall
Straight
says
up.
firsthand, babies are robots. We are robots. Humans are robots. We all need sleep. We all need routine. You said to me today, this morning, oh, I haven't had breakfast. We were walking up here and you said, oh, I haven't had, for those who haven't listened to the first or second one, we're coming up the night before the podcast and staying the night. And last night we had to sleep we didn't see each other because this whole just being extra careful with COVID and stuff. But I've not seen anyone with COVID and I've had a PCR test and I'm in the clear. But anyway, and the time lapse has gone. But with Nacy,
What
I've
did I
lost
say
my
about
trail.
breakfast? What did I say about
Yes,
cooking?
that's it. Thank you. You said, I can't brush my teeth because I haven't eaten breakfast. Are you on a routine
worst
for brushing your teeth?
You know, the worst thing is I still haven't brushed my
Oh, is that what the smell is? No. So you you're on a routine. You see, you're on a robot. You're on a routine.
I am, and I'm definitely not hungry in the middle of the night because I never eat in the middle of the night.
So
I've got picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah, so, babe, and if we go back to our babies in special care, they had them on a routine because they are robots. They have a robot thing. They know we need to give them warmth. We need to give them this much oxygen. We need to give them this much food. Is that roboting? I think so. Anyway, so if you're following a routine, then you can say, well, for the 6-week check, I have my check at 4:30 because we can get there. Yep. I can put the baby in the pram. Yep. My main squeeze, my partner, my husband, my wife, my whoever, because you can be a mum with a wife, because we have lots of same-sex couples, and they had that show on recently, Parents Guidance, and one of our same-sex couples was on there. Anyway, can tap the baby to sleep at 4:30 in the routine, or can take the baby to work. You know that you can do your 6-week check at that time of night because the baby be having a little out and about sleep.
That's right.
So you can plan stuff.
Yes, of course you can. Then, if you don't know what your baby's doing, I don't know how mums without a routine. What if baby's hungry at checkup? How can you ignore the hunger and weigh your baby instead? I don't get it.
No, but we're talking about your checkup.
Oh, my
so you're lying there getting your tummy checked at your 6-week check.
And
doing all this, you see, you did, but the kids were in hospital and you probably didn't even know. And how can you do that when your baby's screaming for hunger and your boobs are going, psh, psh. I just spat as well as milk. It wasn't milk, it was spit. But how can you do that when the baby's screaming and you're having your 6-week check?
Yeah.
Okay, you need a routine. Right, so anyhow, so you need a routine. And the feedback I get is that the routines help these mums. Okay, now why are the routines different for breastfeeding and for bottle feeding? Because the routines are based on what a mum's needs are. You know? Breastfeeding mum's milk, that's what the routines are based on. Bottle feeding is different. Now, people say, oh, you can't use a breastfeeding routine, your milk will dry up. That were the old-fashioned routines. My routines are modern-day routines. What else do you want to know about the routines?
I think, just looking down at something I've highlighted when I started to reread the book, in anticipation for my third baby here, is the other great part about having a routine and knowing that your baby's in bed at 7 o'clock is that time with your partner.
Exactly.
And I just think that that's a topic that gets flown out the window as the main caregiver of a child. Your other relationships, and especially that all-important one with perhaps the child's other parent, it just becomes second, third, fourth down the list, and in not a long period of time that can become a problem and shouldn't, and so I really, really, really appreciate a baby on a routine for that reason. 7 o'clock, I get to spend some time with Luke, and it's always been that way, and it's a really important part of life. And life in 2022, it's a modern thing.
And COVID life. Imagine not having a baby on a routine and you're only allowed to go out of the house at a certain time. Can you imagine living through that COVID lockdown in Melbourne where you were only allowed to go out of the house for a certain amount of time, and then you got everything ready to go out of the house, and then you got out of the house and you got 5 minutes out the door for your 1 hour of exercise where you had to leave the house, the baby's screaming because it wants a feed. I wonder how many mums. Can I tell you a little secret?
Please.
I drive around and I see these people out walking at 4:30 in the afternoon. I look in the pram. Oh, they've got a Tizzie Hall comforter. Oh, they're on my routine.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah.
At the shop, at the hub, we used to watch them. The hub's gone, but yeah. So the routine. Now, why the 7 o'clock bus?
Oh yes, why?
So 7 o'clock bus. So on the routine, we say that babies have to go to bed at 7 o'clock at night. So the reason we put a baby to bed at 7 o'clock at night is because if you put a baby into bed at 7 o'clock at night, not now, and we'll discuss sleep cycles later, but babies start to sleep in sleep cycles, and by the time they're about a year old, they're sleeping in a lot of sleep cycles. So a young baby can go to bed and can sleep for hours and hours and hours, no sleep cycles.
Okay.
At 8 weeks old, which we'll discuss later on, they start rising from sleep cycles in the day, and that becomes catnapping. And at night time, from about 6 months, they get a nighttime sleep cycle, and then another one, and then by a year old, they're having 4 or 5 sleep cycles. So they'll wake at 7, 9, 11.
Are you determining, is a sleep cycle meaning from a baby falls asleep and then completely awakes again? Is that
So
a sleep cycle?
Sleep cycle, so well done, because I always just know so much. I never really explain it very well sometimes. So sleep cycle is what everyone sleeps in sleep cycles. We don't all go to bed, go asleep and stay asleep all night.
Okay.
As adults, we go to bed, we sleep in a short sleep cycle first, and you get a good rest in that. Like during the day, you could just have a little cat nap. You could just put your head down and have a sleep. I think Google do that. They have sleep hubs for people.
I do
pods,
that too.
sleep pods. So you have like a short little sleep where you get a reasonable amount of sleep, and then you have a long sleep. So with a baby, they do a 40-minute short, a 1-year-old, they do a 40-minute short sleep cycle, and then a double, like, what is it?
80, an hour and 20, is that right?
No, 120, what's 2 hours? 120, 80. So they do 40 minutes short sleep cycle, 80 minutes long sleep cycle, wake at the 2-hour mark. Yep. But that is really important. That deep sleep is when their filing cabinet works, they sort the whole brain out, they go over stuff in dreams that they did during the day, they remember trying to take a step, they remember trying to fall. Like, did you know that when a baby crawls around a room and they know that there's a step there, and they're crawling around the room and they come to a step and they go backwards down the step, when that baby starts to walk, their brain doesn't know that there's a step there. It looks totally different, and they need to relearn that there's a step, but they do all this in that really important sleep time.
Okay.
And a baby who sleeps makes eye contact, looks at people, is happy. People talk, people engage with babies who sleep. Babies who don't sleep and the mum's feeding them every hour at night and they're restless and they're crying and they're cranky, they don't make eye contact, they don't look at people. They're constantly hungry. A baby who is fed every hour or 2 hours at night is starving hungry because they're getting like this watery milk and they're unhappy and they don't want to be put down, and then people call it separation anxiety. It's called hunger. They're hungry. So these babies who have this kind of separation anxiety at 9 months, babies do realize at 9 months that they're different to mum or dad and that they're not the same, and they want they get upset when you leave the room and stuff. But a lot of the cases with a lot of children, that isn't what's going on. Some that is, but others are like so hungry that they don't want mum out of sight because she's food.
Sure.
And they're starving even though they're fed a lot. So anyway, you put them to bed at 7 o'clock at night and they sleep, short sleep cycle, long sleep cycle. They wake at 9 o'clock, everything's the same, back to sleep. Short sleep cycle, long sleep cycle, wake, everything's the same, back to sleep. If you put a baby to bed at 7 o'clock at night, their morning wake-up sleep cycle is 5 a.m.
Okay.
They wake up at 5 a.m., they look around, or everything's the same, back to sleep. If you put that same baby to bed at 7:40 p.m.,
they
wake up, so then their morning sleep cycle becomes 5:40 a.m. Yeah?
I know what's going to
They
happen.
can wake up and go, the birds are singing, it's light, it's time to start the new day. Wah, wah, mum, dad, come get me. It's time to start the day, and that's them awake, and they've lost 2 hours of sleep. So
Makes
that's
so
why
much
the
sense.
7 o'clock bus is important.
It makes so much sense. I have heard once before, even for adults, that the most restorative sleep happens between 7 and 12. I don't know if that's got anything to do with your research, but I think 7 o'clock just works. And I like to as well that a baby that goes to bed at 7 and wakes at 7 is going to turn into a child that goes to bed at 7 and wakes at 7. And 7 is just the perfect time to wake up in preparation for kinder and school.
Or like us, our children get the bus to school every day, and they have to be on the bus. My kids constantly go on about the fact that, like, at the weekend they stay up a bit later, and then they don't sleep in, and then during the week we put them to bed at, so Killian's always having a bit of a tanty about the fact that I've got really good kids, and going away on this boat trip, I was just so proud of them, and most of it's sleep. Like I just thought, oh my goodness, we have just put so much work into the routine, keeping them on a routine, using a routine, and they were just so good. And I'm just so glad that we had those boundaries for them. But now it's funny because Killian gets really upset because we aim to put them, Kieran is supposed to go to bed at 7:30. He's 7. Killian's supposed to go to bed at 8:30.
Okay.
He's 11.
Yes.
If the girls are there, they go at various times, and then Dara goes to bed about 9 o'clock, depending if he's got swimming early in the morning, he has to be up at 5:30 early, okay? Killian gets really, really upset because it's like, we don't get Kieran to bed at 7:30. We're lucky to have him in bed at we're lucky to have him in bed at 8:40.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Killian's like, oh, I'm not going to bed 20 minutes after my brother. And it's like, I'm not going to, and it's like, okay, or I'm not going to bed at the same time as my brother. And it's like, okay, you go to bed at 9. And then it's all, but they go to bed kind of on a routine during the week. And then the weekend, and then they don't wake up because they've gone to bed at a reasonable time and you're going to wake them in the morning. Then the weekend, they stay up late and they're up at the crack of dawn. And
they're missing their bus, do you think?
Yeah,
is that what it is?
And then they keep saying, the earlier we go to bed, like they know it. They quote the book. It's funny. And talking of a routine, we proved that the routine works. Have you ever heard them say, one of the myths is Tizzie Hall didn't even follow her own routines with her children?
I have heard that, yeah. So did you follow the routine with your children?
It depends when. So this is where that came from.
Right.
So that came from a radio interview.
Yes.
So I did a radio interview. I had a friend who was cycling in the Tour de France. And I did a radio interview because he was my child's godfather.
Okay.
Dara's godfather. And I was asked to do a radio interview. And the boys who are actually here recording this, these boys, the team, they actually met this person when they came up to do some filming at the warehouse.
Fantastic.
Anyway, so we went away to watch this guy in the Tour de France. And while we were there, we got there and we had the routine and we had Dara and he was on the routine and we got there and the routine was brilliant. And then it seems to be when you come home, I don't know what it is about coming home. Maybe it's when you get there, you've got the adrenaline, you've got all your family and friends, everything's good. And then when you get home, maybe it's a downer. Back to Australia, it's not home. Home's there, sorry. When you come back to Australia, the other place, not home, home's Ireland, it's like you're on some type of downer. And so the radio interview I was doing was because we'd been to the Tour de France and this person had come second and it was very exciting at the time and whatever, and radio interview. And they said to me, well, do you follow the routine with your own child? And I said, well, actually, funny you should say that. So what happened was we got back from France and I stopped doing the routine. And I thought, I don't need to do the routine. Like, I am the routine. It's the book. Like, I know it. So I thought, well, I'm going to just, I'm not going to get him up at 7, I'm too tired.
Okay.
So he got up at 8. And then we did up at 8, bed instead of 9 o'clock, bed at 10 o'clock. The next day up at 8:30. Instead of bed at 9 o'clock, we did bed at 10:30. And it was chop and change, chop and change, chop and change. And he was on formula. So it wasn't even, as we said before about the formula, it wasn't even like the breast milk was an issue, okay? Anyway, next thing we had this absolutely screaming mess. Wow. He was 6 months old. He was screaming. He was so unhappy. He was impossible to be around. He was a nightmare. Nathan said, I'm getting the book. I'm staying home and I'm putting him back on your routine.
Yeah.
Nathan's my husband.
Wow.
I'm putting him back on your routine. Nathan took the day off work, stayed home, put him back, clock fixed. It was like a switch. Non-routine, screaming baby, routine, perfect baby. So when they asked me this, I said, well, and they said, oh, you didn't follow the routine with your own child, huh? And that was the tagline that got stolen. Wow. And then everyone used it.
Okay.
We were talking about 4 days.
Right.
4 days. And then they asked me, so, if your baby's catnapping, do you run and get the book and look up the cat? And I'm like, no, I am the book. Like, if my baby's catnapping in the first 8 weeks, try moving him to the next routine. I don't need to get the book to read that. I know it off by heart. So that's where that came from.
You just must implement it yourself. And thank you, myth busted. Yes. So I'm happy about that little story. Thank you.